On this episode of In the Fight, soldiers provide on-the-job training to Afghan forces. Military leaders meet to discuss the Army of 2020. An iconic vehicle heads home, marking the end of an era. We profile an Afghan Army general. And we'll see what one Marine overcame to compete in the Warrior Games. Every day, soldiers continue to train Afghan forces while working with and protecting the Afghan population. Army Staff Sergeant Mark Decker spoke with members of the 377th Parachute Field Artillery Regiment about this on-the-job training and files this report.
U.S. soldiers from Forward Operating Base Salerno's Parachute Field Artillery Regiment and Afghan uniformed police jointly patrolled villages in Khost province to gather information on people planting IEDs and to verify biometric data. The villagers supplied general information, and Task Force Steel paratroopers say the visits encourage trust, which can lead to more valuable intelligence later on. The visits also provide an assessment as to the current proficiency of Afghan National Security Forces.
Well, today we're trying to get a sense of how often the government is interacting with the people and how often some security forces get out here in order to provide them with some sort of security so they can get on with their daily lives. From what we find out is that, yes, occasionally they do, but not quite as often as they'd like. There is still some insurgent activity here, which is a bit surprising considering we're only about 6 kilometers from FOB Salerno and then about 10 kilometers from Coast City proper, which you'd think would have decent security, and they do, but not to the degree that we'd like to see it.
The joint effort between U.S. and Afghan National Security Forces has improved since Task Force Steel arrived.
We don't have to tell them what to do, they just do their role. They do their part without being told or asked or anything else. So when we first got here, we had to kind of ask them to do certain things, and now they just do it on their own. So I think it's working out pretty well.
While the transition from U.S. forces to Afghan forces takes time to fully develop, members of Task Force Steel say it's headed in the right direction. Army Staff Sergeant Mark Decker, Khost Province, Afghanistan.
As the nation's army returns to a peacetime force, leaders from the active and reserve components met recently to discuss the changes that must be made to help shape the United States Army of 2020. Army Captain Kyle Key brings us this story.
At the National Guard Professional Education Center in North Little Rock, more than 180 general officers from the active Army, Reserves, and National Guard met this week to discuss plans to transition the Army into a smaller but more capable and adaptable force.
The days of being forward deployed, high expense, are probably going to come to an end.
Commanding generals of the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command and U.S. Forces Command outlined a plan to utilize the strengths of the Army National Guard and Reserves, but the path will be paved with tough decisions.
This structural transition is going to be painful. We're going to machinate over it, and it's going to be very, very difficult. But we're going to get it right.
In an unprecedented meeting of senior leaders from across the Army, General McKinley reiterated, as the Army of 2020 comes into shape, it must not be hollow.
Most of the forces that we deal with are going to be garrisoned here at home. We're going to have to be ready tonight to fight. We're going to have to move out quickly with the lift that's available. And we're going to have to go to the combatant commands and serve and win quickly.
Plans also call for sharing of modernized equipment and resources, improvements in training, more condensed doctrinal manuals, and working with the reserve component to align maneuver brigades.
We want them to look exactly like those forces that are in the active force. And so there'll be some maneuvering that's taking place. We've had great cooperation from FORSCOM and the reserve component.
Reporting from Camp Robinson, Arkansas, I'm Captain Kyle Key.
The United States Navy's latest and greatest warship stopped at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base while on her maiden voyage home to San Diego. Army Sergeant First Class Robert Stevenson takes us on board for a close-up look at this amphibious assault ship.
The USS San Diego cruised into Guantanamo Bay for a quick stop during her inaugural voyage.
We just left the Pascagoula Huntington Ingalls shipyard in Mississippi, and we're actually en route to our future home port at San Diego, and we'll have our commissioning in our namesake city on May 19th.
The San Antonio-class landing transport dock can perform a wide array of missions, but its primary mission is moving people and equipment, according to Boynton.
We can actually fit upwards of 700 Marines on board in excess to that, as well as all their equipment and some of their Humvees and things like that. The purpose of the amphibious ship is to be able to actually use ballast tanks and actually sink the aft into the ship and provide that platform to launch and recover boats and landing craft.
Because of its shallow draft, it can be docked almost anywhere, which makes it ideal for providing support in a number of other ways as well.
About 70% of our operations are humanitarian and disaster relief. The Health Services Department is 17 people, and each person is specifically trained for their specialty. It really is a sense of pride to offer my services and my career being a dentist to other countries and the crew.
Although the ship is new, its conception goes back a ways. The funding originated with the previous administration.
The ship has actually been under construction since 2007 when the keel was laid, and a lot of the spaces weren't completed until at the end of last year. The ship actually was delivered to the U.S. Navy on December 19th of 2011, and the crew moved on board in January of 2012 and will be conducting its maiden voyage back to San Diego.
San Diego, departing.
With a crew of less than 400, the San Diego, along with their other San Antonio-class sister ships, is helping to modernize the fleet by offering new technology, which helps to drastically cut down on the number of personnel it takes to run a vessel of this size. From here, it's off to San Diego by way of the Panama Canal, where it will be a tight but manageable fit. For Joint Task Force Guantanamo, this is Sergeant First Class Robert Stevenson reporting.
I am Brian Riley, serving in southern Afghanistan. I would like to send a shout out to my family in southern Maryland. Hope you guys have a good Mother's Day.
Hi, this is Specialist Jonathan Freeman, serving in Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division. I'd like to say hi to my dad and my brother back home in Indiana, along with my fiance, Cheyenne, and my son, Ben. I miss you all. I love you. See you soon.
Hey, I'm PFC Weiss. I'm currently serving in Afghanistan. I just want to give a shout out to all my family back in Washington. I love you guys. Hope you're doing good, and I'm great.
Hey, I'm Sergeant Bobby Evans, RBWT 121 Field Artillery, Camp Clark, Afghanistan. I'd like to give a shout out to my sweet wife, Holly Evans. Tell her I love her, and tell her that I'll be home as soon as I can.
Coming up, 3rd Army brings the last MRAP home from Iraq. And Marines play a unique and strange role at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. Check out dvidshub.net for the latest accurate and reliable information as In the Fight continues. What does the vehicle term MRAP stand for? The answer when we return.
I want to give a shout out to my family and friends.
I want to send a shout out to my husband,
to my parents, my family back home.
I'd like to give a shout out to my girlfriend.
To my family and friends in Lansing, Michigan.
To my family out in Tucson, Arizona.
My beautiful wife and children in Des Moines, Iowa.
To everybody in Texas.
In York, Pennsylvania.
Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Chicago, Illinois.
Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Orlando, Florida. Oceanside, California.
And Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
I love you guys. I miss you. And I hope I'll see you soon.
The environment is my passion. Every day, I live for the outdoors and all of its challenges. That's why I enlisted in the Coast Guard. Now, I serve to protect the environment and defend my country. It's like I was born for this.
Were you born ready for a greater challenge? Find out at gocoastguard.com.
What does the vehicle term MRAP stand for? The answer is C, Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected. Another chapter of the withdrawal from Iraq ends as 3rd Army ARCENT is helping transport the last MRAP home. Army Sergeant Ian Morales takes us to Port Shuaibah, Kuwait, to see this iconic vehicle as it makes its way back to the States.
All seems normal at this loading dock. Equipment is inspected and documented for eventual transport to a number of countries. But today is special.
The specialty of the day is the fact that we're loading the last piece out of Iraq, last vehicle. It's a pretty special event. I mean, it's part of history. It's definitely an event I'll remember for the rest of my life.
It's the same vehicle that was part of the last convoy to cross the Kuwait-Iraqi border last December as Operation New Dawn came to an end. Labeled as the last mine-resistant ambush protected vehicle, or MRAP, out of Iraq, this Cayman has one last mission for the history books.
This particular vehicle, the last MRAP that was in Iraq, we've actually will be going to a museum at Fort Hood, Texas. Just because of the significance of the MRAP, and it was the actual last combat vehicle that came out of Iraq.
Colonel John S. Lascotti, commander of the 402nd Army Field Support Brigade, explains that the MRAP is a product of the modern warfighter's needs.
Well, really, I think the MRAP is an icon as to just how quickly and how adaptable our Army is. Again, just a few short years ago, we hadn't even dreamed of MRAPs. We saw an emerging threat. We were able to quickly counter that threat and then produce these in tens of thousands in a short period of time and get them forward onto the battlefield. I think it's an amazing testament to the agility of our Army.
Even though its combat mission has come to an end, the Cayman is needed once more to serve as a reminder of what was achieved in Iraq to both service member and citizen alike. For 3rd Army ARCENT Public Affairs, I'm Army Sergeant Ian Morales, Port Shuaibah, Kuwait.
When you think about a Marine, the first thing that comes to mind is a tough-as-nails warfighter. But there is a group of Marines that play a unique and strange role at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. Marine Corporal Lisa Tortolo dispels the myths about what they do and brings us this story.
Common misconceptions about being a cryogenics Marine is that we freeze aliens and for the government, and we freeze body parts of human beings and things like that, which we do not do.
What the Marines of Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 11 Cryogenics Section actually do is compress oxygen and nitrogen into liquid form, which is used to fill aircraft tires, cushion landing gear, and allow pilots to breathe at high altitudes.
Pilots can't fly if they can't breathe, and they can't land if they don't have any nitrogen in their tires.
Dealing with temperatures colder than -300 degrees, the process is slow, careful work. Without cryogenics Marines, aircrew would not be able to breathe at high altitudes, and aircraft would not be able to land safely. For Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, I'm Corporal Lisa Tortolo.
The Afghan military has come a long way since U.S. and its coalition partners began training its forces. However, without strong internal leadership, there can be no success. NATO Channel correspondent Mel Preen profiles an Afghan general and brings us this story.
As the Afghan Army's Chief of Staff, General Sher Mohammad Karimi has faced challenging times of late following a spate of attacks by members of the Afghan security forces on coalition soldiers. Recently, he accompanied ISAF Commander General John Allen to the east of Afghanistan to address American troops shortly after 2 of their colleagues had been killed by a man wearing Afghan Army uniform.
We must trust each other, otherwise we will lose to the enemy. The enemy is trying to create that mistrust between us, between you and the ANA soldiers, between you and the ANP. This is the tactics of the enemy. But I can assure you, the sacrifice you are making, you are winning.
The young Mohammad Karimi, seen here on the left, began his army career at the Military Academy in Kabul. He got top grades, which saw him selected for a place at Sandhurst, the Royal Military Officer Training Academy based in Britain. When the Soviet War began, the communists sent Mohammad Karimi to jail because he was Western educated.
And I spent quite a bit of time, more than a year, in jail. That was tough days in jail. going through a lot of difficulties.
Mohammad Karimi got so sick in prison that the Soviets released him, thinking he was going to die anyway. He regained his health but didn't want to leave the country because of his wife and children. After the Soviets left, civil war broke out across Afghanistan. Looting was rife and many women were raped. Then the Taliban came to power. Mohammad Karimi says people welcomed them.
When Taliban came, people were very happy and they said they've been delivered. But after some time, people saw the true face of the Taliban. They were entirely different people. They didn't believe in school, they didn't believe in modern education, they were thinking purely religion, nothing more. So I had a bad time and a very hard time to work with them because they were not educated, they didn't have any manners, any discipline. It was very difficult to work with them and tell them what to do and what not to do.
Mohammad Karimi fled to Pakistan, returning to Afghanistan once the Taliban regime fell in 2001. It was then that he was tasked with building up a new Afghan army. Since then, the army has grown to 176,000 personnel, and it's received billions of dollars in new equipment, such as vehicles and weapons, and new training facilities.
The ANA and the NSF as a whole, the police and the army are in a position to defend themselves. We have that capability now, training-wise, individual-wise, small arms-wise, but the only problem that we have is the enablers. To have self-sufficiency, we need enablers, particularly the firepower, logistics support, and engineering equipment, because the enemy is using a lot of IEDs. So that capabilities must grow.
Afghans are shouldering an increasing amount of responsibility for securing their country. By 2014, security across Afghanistan should have been transitioned to their authority. It's not yet clear if the Army's need for enablers will be met entirely, but countries have signed long-term partnership agreements, pledging their support post-2014.
So your sacrifice has not wasted. Your sacrifices for humanity, not just the Afghan people. Your sacrifices for people who have suffered for 33 years through the hands of such elements. It is a rewarding mission. And this enemy fighting against us is not an enemy of Afghanistan. It is the enemy of the whole humanity.
Mel Preen in Afghanistan for the NATO channel.
This is Staff Sergeant Darren Wood. To my wife, family, and friends, I love you and I miss you. And a special hello to my grandson Chandler. I miss you, big boy. See you soon.
This is Sergeant Chris Ivy with 140th Cav out of Camp Clark, Coast Province, Afghanistan. Just want to give a shout out to family back home in North Carolina. Miss y'all. Hope to see y'all soon.
How you doing? This is Tech Sergeant Gary Smith. I just want to give a shout out to my wife Lily, my two boys Jacob and Jonas, and my daughter Genesis. I love you. I'll be home soon.
Coming up, we'll see what one Marine overcame to compete in the Warrior Games. And we'll showcase some of the best photos from our service members as In the Fight, presented by Divids, continues. How many years has the Warrior Games been held? The answer when we return.
With the new Military 24/7 app from Divids, you turn your favorite mobile device into a window to the front lines. Connect with your nation's finest men and women through our video and photography archives and stay up to date with news reported directly from service members. Quickly share information and breaking stories with friends via Facebook, Twitter, or email. News, photos, video. Your military 24/7.
Training is about more than muscle. It's about inner strength. So I push myself. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. I train with the best, a team that shares my drive and commitment. We collect intelligence, guard our shores against drug smugglers, and keep our waterways safe, because our nation expects more.
If you expect more, maybe you were born ready. Find out at gocoastguard.com.
How many years has the Warrior Games been held? The answer is C, 3. Abraham Lincoln once said, "All that a man hath will he give for his life, and while all contribute of their substance, the soldier puts his life at stake, and often yields it up in his country's cause. The highest merit, then, is due to the soldier." Army Specialist Aimi Fujikawa takes us to a memorial for a National Guardsman and brings us this story.
Maryland Guard soldiers and guests gathered to honor the life of Guardsman Major Robert Marshanti II at the 5th Regiment Armory in Baltimore, Maryland.
I knew Bob for 2.5 years, working with him full time. The day that had happened, everybody was in shock, and the next day I was selected to be the escort, and I linked up with him. And at that point, it was a very emotional experience, you know. But you have that sense of duty. That you need to get him home.
Major Marshanti worked with the 29th Infantry Division Security Partnering Team 2 in Afghanistan.
Present
He's a great guy, great soldier. We're going to miss him. Because of the work that he does for us, there's going to be projects that we're working on 5 years from now that started with Bob. So we're going to have memories, fresh memories of him for many years to come.
For the Maryland National Guard Public Affairs Office, I'm Specialist Aimi Fujikawa.
Sailors with the EVOC, or Emergency Vehicle Operation Combat Casualty Team, are responsible for getting the patient from the flight line to the emergency room. Petty Officer Patrick House introduces us to the service members at Roll 3 Hospital.
When people get hurt, time is of the essence.
Once we get the page, it's like an alarm clock. You just wake up.
Patients wounded in action need to be transported quickly and safely to emergency care.
There's somebody out there who's defending what we believe in and needs help, and my job is to help.
From the flight line to the operating room, the Emergency Vehicle Operation Combat Casualty Team handle all patients that are medevaced to Kandahar's Roll 3 Hospital.
Every night's something different. You got to keep an open mindset. You can't go out there, you can't get complacent. Things change at the drop of a dime.
4 minutes.
You see some bad stuff and your training just kicks in, your brain kind of shuts off and you just go to do the work that you're trained to do. I know that the Navy trained me well because I've had to do my job in a way that before coming here I didn't think, never really runs through your mind that you have to actually do CPR on somebody.
Valuable training that helps save lives.
Knowing that the patients are taken care of and they're stable and they're going to make it home is a proud and amazing feeling.
Petty Officer Patrick House, Kandahar Airfield, Afghanistan.
More than 300 athletes gathered around to compete in the 2012 Marine Corps Trials. The trials are the Corps' means to form this year's all-Marine team to compete against sister services in the Warrior Games. Marine Staff Sergeant Will Skelton gives us a closer look at what one competitor had to overcome.
It only took an email to get Travis Green back in the gamut of being a competitive athlete.
I live in Boise, Idaho, so there's not a lot of adaptive sports out there, and so I jump on any opportunity that looks like a fun trip.
That email led Travis to the 2010 Warrior Games in Colorado to compete against the other service branches.
You know, it's so hard to find adaptive sports sometimes when you go home, and so, you know, when I was going through my recovery, sports was like the best medicine.
Travis, along with 3 other Marines and 1 Navy corpsman, were injured in a secondary IED blast while giving aid to a wounded Marine in December of 2005. It was that IED blast in Iraq that took Travis's legs, but not his competitive spirit.
You know, I was an athlete before my injury, and so to come out and find that I'm still an athlete after I lose my legs is a huge thing.
It's that sentiment that most athletes competing in this year's Marine Corps trials brought to the table.
This is just a great event. I mean, 10 days of doing sports, then you make the Warrior Games and you got 21 days of nothing but sports. So it's heaven for me.
Travis and the other athletes are living up to the Wounded Warrior Regiment's motto, still in the fight, as they edge closer to the All-Marine team. From Camp Pendleton, California, I'm Staff Sergeant Will Skelton.
Divids is a 24/7 operation that provides a timely, accurate, and reliable connection between the media and the military serving worldwide. Through a network of over 200 portable satellite transmitters around the globe and a distribution hub in Atlanta, Georgia, Divids gives you access to the front lines with live and archived broadcast video, still imagery, and print products. Visit our website at dvidshub.net and search through our enormous video and photo library. Register on our website to gain complete access to high-definition content, along with breaking news alerts and webcasts from top military officials. For questions or comments about In the Fight or Divids, you can email us at ondemand@dvidshub.net or follow us on Twitter and Facebook. As we close, we feature some of the best photos that Divids has to offer, as we listen to Eddie Horst's composition, Pangea. See you next time, In the Fight.